Hello, my name is CHARD DENIORD. I'm the Poet Laureate of Vermont, and welcome to Poets Speak. Today, I have the great honor of talking to Partridge Boswell. Partridge grew up in the Finger Lakes region of New York and began writing poems in high school. He attended Middlebury College, where he also began writing song lyrics and singing in a band called The Cows. After several years of writing both poems and songs, he came to the conclusion that some poems are songs and some songs are poems, and where they converge is real interesting, end of quote. He published his first book of poems called Some Far Country, which won the prestigious Grow Your Poetry Prize in 2013, 2 years after his wife Polly died from breast cancer, leaving him to raise his 4 young children on his own. The Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Stephen Dunn wrote in a blurb for Partridge's debut book, quote, if we are trapped in the amber of the moment, which is a quote from Kurt Vonnegut, as one of Partridge's epigraphs states, Boswell does not try to untrap us, but to deliver time and again with brilliant accuracy what it feels like to be alive in such moments. As good a debut as I can remember, end of quote. In addition to writing poetry, Partridge has worked as the director of the Lebanon Opera House in New Hampshire and as an organizer of Bookstock, the annual literary festival in Woodstock, Vermont, where he lives. For the past few years, he has toured the Northeast and other areas of the country with a few fellow troubadours, Nat Williams and Peter Money, serenading poetry lovers and music lovers alike in a group called Los Lorca. Welcome, Partridge. It's wonderful to have you here.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, Chard. Thank you for having me.
I'm wondering, Partridge, if you maybe could start us off with a poem, maybe a recent poem.
I'd be delighted to. This one was written a couple of years ago, and I think you'll immediately grasp the context. It begins with an epigraph from Pablo Neruda's Ode to Clarity. I must walk with the wind and the water, open windows, break down doors, break walls, illuminate corners. I can't be with you today. I must fulfill my obligation of light. Flying home after the protest, we taxi past her plane, abandoned on the tarmac, its dark porthole staring out like eyes of dead fish from a dry aquarium. The name of a country no longer ours, stenciled across a fuselage, lifeless, two-dimensional letters. A child's nickname, aborted after too many carelessly invoked and spat it back as a joke. Ignorant of its origin, the fond formation of vowels, the touch-and-go struggle to be born. Lifting into soft bituminous night, shattered crowns of human light scatter below us, spidering veins along roads and riverbeds, not gold or gaudy gems, but pulsing incandescent hands held in the darkness from here to the last outpost of feeling. Each a cosmos of meaning, keeping vigil over tropes they'll try to steal. The thousand Vegas they'll try to smother again so we can rekindle and constellate another and another and another with the patience learned of loving someone other than ourselves. Fine, we were punked, but was that really the best we could do? Rising to a drone of propellers, the world below falling dim and focused with work to be done and oaths to be taken, not shirked. Did we really stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, in our own time and city, chanting and singing as one from the womb of a mother who could not call us home to roost or tell us winning only leaves you more to lose? With nothing to shine through, not even the simplest tune to move you, were loss, not also a birth, and keening its own vivas. And yes, there were real mothers, and children too, alongside someone I could have sworn was you, carrying your own sign, lettered clear and bold for all who can read, and especially all who won't ever read this or any other poem, if for no other reason than to avoid the bewildered silence, mistaking this for the end, when it's only the beginning.
Wow. Partridge, you recited that whole poem. Do you do that with all of your poems?
No. It's an exception.
That's terrific. Well, you know, more contemporary poets need to do that. I mean, it would just do so much for poetry if that kind of contact with the audience, with the reader in public were made. I mean, you know, poets up until the mid-20th century were doing that, and no longer. Galway Canal did it, but...
I've heard Galway recite some of his poems, yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the provenance of that poem and who the you is in the poem?
Ah, the you. Well, we just by chance, totally by coincidence, found ourselves in New York City a few days after the last election, and we got kind of swept up in what became a protest, and we had no idea this was going on. We were simply there as tourists. But it took on a whole, a very surreal, of course, and very, an energy that we hadn't expected, and of course it left us reinterpreting everything and putting it into a context we hadn't anticipated. So we actually did find ourselves at the airport, at a small airport in Westchester, and Hillary Clinton's plane was there, and that sure had the makings of a poem, I guess, when paired with all that was going on in the city itself. It was. There really wasn't a way to articulate it other than for it to spill out into a poem, and I think it probably did that the next day or so. I sent it off, and a few weeks later it won an award. So,
where did you send it?
It was I sent it to the Tishman Review, and it was the Edna St. Vincent Millay Award that it won.
So congratulations.
So yeah, but it was that was a powerful time for all of us, and that was certainly not the only poem that came out of that time.
So you certainly must be working on a new book at this point, after your first book, which Some Far Country, came out in 2013. And I was just wondering, what has your writing been like following this powerful book of Some Far Country that combines poems that you wrote before your wife passed and also after your wife passed? And
right. You know, I guess I'm trying new material. I'm working, as you mentioned, with Los Lorcas pretty actively. I'm finding that you know, originally I thought of it as sort of a side gig, and it wasn't. It was more of a consolation to times when I was maybe my writing was a little more fallow and wasn't being published. It was a nice compliment to what I was doing with writing, and being able to make music and write songs and so forth. But the more we've been playing together and writing together, it's become more of a sort of a mutual symbiosis.
You know, you sorry to interrupt you, but you brought your guitar.
I brought it
and
along.
You just mentioned Los
fun.
Lorca, so maybe this would be a good time to hear a song, and you talk a little bit about what you do with Peter Money, who is an editor and publisher, and Nat Williams, who is your other partner in Los Lorca.
Right.
And what you're going to be doing in the future as far as gigs here and there. I know you're traveling around the country with this band now.
It seems like there's there's a call for it.
Yeah.
I guess in some places, in some pockets.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be happy to
Okay.
to try that if we.
Sure. So not all the poets on this show bring their guitar
Not I'm
or their flutes.
surprised.
Or their trombones. So you're the first to bring
this
an instrument. This
well,
is
this
wonderful.
format kind of lends itself to.
It does. So there's a kind of Orphic quality now you've brought to the program, which I really appreciate.
My pleasure. Well, let's see. I might as well play this one that references an icon from the 70s. You might recall, especially if you're growing up in the 70s. There was probably just a small part of you that might have idolized this person, sketchy dude that he was. This is called Papa Wheelie. Oil-dank bowels of a nightmare garage. You ride benighted, Saturday morning's acolyte, sleep-dazed but aright, straight from the ramp you built last night in your driveway. In homage to the great, adrenaline-hazed, Evel Knievel, archetype for every danger boy and boneheaded troglodyte bent on a bright schematic, vying to break more bones than the Guinness World Record, flying prone over cars, buses, lions, fountains, sharks, canyons, rattlesnakes, before the neighborhood wakes. Topping the slope, you rev your banana bike and pedal hard on the approach. Past a hushed gang of squirrels and robins holding their breath, half hoping this levitation will and won't be your last. Did he always wear stars and stripes? Was his helmet screwed on tight? Will his next attempt be televised? If he succeeds and fails yet again to reach the light. Devil dared and fair warned, you rocket as advertised off a wood plank, sailing headlong over fame's Colosseum, into your first kiss in beer and Eucharist, your first dorm room farewell, and first rock concert at the Orpheum. Body's first chemistry experiments and first storm of contrite indignation shadowing your first arrest. Your firstborn silence like a warm ghost. Your island that formed in a widening ocean when your first greyhound pulled away from the curb, taking a friend more than a friend. Inevitable as the first long gaze that followed, soaring through every stunt since, angling for the abyss, realizing too late your trajectory's off by an inch, and this is going to hurt. Brace yourself for that embrace. Did he always stars and stripes? Was his helmet screwed on tight? Will his next attempt be televised? If he succeeds and fails, he yet'll get to reach the light. Learning to fly, but I ain't got wings. Coming down is the hardest thing.
Hey, thank you, Partridge. It's amazing. So talked at some point about the convergence of poetry and song and music. And could you talk a little bit about how that song came to be? Yeah, it sounds like it was a poem at first, and then you wanted to sing it.
It was a poem at first, yeah. That's how it came about. And you know, for me, poetry is words and music in the same breath. And I think every poem has the potential to be a song. It's simply, that's I mean, poetry is an oral art. It started as an oral art, and it continues. But you know, I usually we'll find a poem, and then it will have a certain quality about it, and you can hear the rhythm, you can hear the meter. It's very obvious. It may have a rhyme, may have an obvious rhyme or something internal, but and sometimes it will start with the music itself. I guess if I had to describe it, it's sort of, we were talking about the FCC earlier, and that acronym actually serves me well. It's I describe it as full circle composition. So if you're starting with the music of a poem, I mean, poetry begins with the music for me, at least personally. But if you're starting with the music, then the words flow out of that music, and so you have the poem itself. But somewhere along the line, you may have forgotten, especially if the poem is transcribed and it lives on paper, then you may have forgotten or can no longer hear the music unless you say it out loud. So, and then even more so if you recite it. So then, you know, if you have it on paper, then it comes back around and you find the music. You sort of rediscover the music, the original music, ideally. And you know, when the music and the lyric they match up, that's when you get songs that get stuck in your head, like. You know, and you can't get them out, or you know, just they become memorable, memorable pieces of art. So
I wonder if you could now just read a poem that has its own verbal music. I was thinking maybe of this beautiful poem, a couple of them, "Still" or "Wonder," and just to hear for us to hear the verbal music in the poems as opposed to the verbal music and the music, for lack of a better.
Sure, I could do that. I actually have a new poem.
Okay.
That I think it fits this time of year pretty well when we start to wish that we were in a warmer place. But this is sort of taking a Vermont icon, a northern New England icon, and wondering what would he do in a totally different context. What would that be like? Could I even imagine it? So this is called "Frost at Lighthouse Beach."
Okay, great.
He's out early with all the other dawn and shell seekers, imitating waiting shanks, treading his own delible barefoot thread along the backwash of Sanibel's sand, puttering and pausing, stooping for stray sparks of literal bling at his feet, maundering on, the wooden ham of his head dipped, fixed on what could be periwinkles, sea biscuits, or whelks slipping through the frothy film and spillage. He dodders at the surf's effervescent hem, baggy khaki trousers rolled to his shins, Tommy Bahama luau print festooned with swaying palms and surfing wahinis splayed open to the navel of his barrel chest, turning a liver-tinted tulip over in his leathered farmer's palm, his ancient lips imperceptibly kissing each word mumbled under his breath, heedless if anyone might sense his affection for the waking light, or be the least bit curious in his discoveries. Undaunted by deadlines or lectures or harvests of young unripe minds, not wielding an axe helve or weeding a garden or needing to justify wedding a vocation with an avocation, just on vacation, seizing whatever washes up and catches his eye. His Crenshaw cocked to one side in a crux of amazement, cresting the decisive moment when he almost pockets his treasure for a shelf or a grandchild's slack-jawed awe, then tosses it back without a sigh.
Ah, thank you. Gosh, wish Frost were around to hear that one. What were you inspired by to write this?
Well, I mean, we all kind of grapple with the ghost of Robert Frost. He's everywhere we look. So I had to. I think maybe I had a little bit too much Frost and needed to exercise him down to Florida or something like that.
Well, he spent time in Florida.
I'm sure he got around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He liked to spend time down there with a few of his other colleagues, Wallace Stevens in particular. Yeah. And I'm sure spent time on the beach. There's such beautiful verbal music in that poem.
Well, who knows? It might be a song one day.
Yeah. Well, it works. It works as a poem as well. You wrote something very interesting in the proem, or the first poem in your book, Some Far Country, the last stanza. I say to you, my own dear reader, you are both lasso to be slipped and a bridge to be crossed, then burned like the page you must now turn. Could you just talk a little bit about that as a kind of address to your reader and as a kind of apology for your poems?
Well, I think it is ambivalent, hopefully not in a, pejorative sense. I obviously I'm saying it with the utmost respect for the reader, but it is a caveat, and I think it's simply there to say, beware. Proceed at your own risk. There are rewards for you, but there are also some potential pitfalls, and ultimately it's a it's a bit of a backhanded thank you, I suppose. But it's acknowledging, if you've come this far, we might as well go on together.
Yeah. Well, great. You've just been through such an enormous amount in the last, decade, I guess, is the time period as far as what you've lost, what you've gained. Also, you've remarried and you have 3 more children in the house than you did to begin with. So there are 7, although some have left the house and are in college and beyond college. How has poetry sustained you? And what have you discovered? You just talked about both the epiphanies and the pitfalls.
I'm glad you asked that. It's been a very busy time. It's been a fraught time for all of us. But yes, the past 7-8 years have been especially so for our family. But I think as the first poem, my very first poem I read or recited today suggests that, I seldom harbor any hope that a reader or a listener will take away a particular meaning, but in that particular poem, I am hoping that they see that we are connected and we continue to reach out, that the world is still here, that we to celebrate and to love, and also that we may not have control over certain things that happen to us, but we are able to make a choice of how we respond to things and how we filter things, and certainly where we get our news from. We can actually choose whether we're dying miserably every day for lack of what is found in poetry, or whether we're actually getting our news from poetry, whether that we've incorporated that into our lives and we're experiencing the world. And I think for me personally, poetry has helped me to re-embrace the world. I think, and I think, that leads into a really nice quote that from Lee Young Lee, the poet Lee Young Lee. I'd love to read if you don't mind. Yeah. He says, "I do believe that poetry makes better people. How come we're not allowed to say this? Nobody says this. There is a great poet, I won't mention his name, who said, 'Poetry isn't therapy.' I think it is. And in fact, when I read his poems, I felt that they saved my life. Am I stupid? Am I one of those idiots who goes around saying that poetry saved my life? His poems, I can say this, saved my life. And I bet they saved his life."
Wow. I don't know who he's referring to there, but could be any number of great poets. Yeah. Lee Young Lee is a contemporary poet. For those who aren't familiar with his work, you should buy his books, starting with the new one is called The Undressing.
The Undressings.
And the first
Wonderful
one
book.
is The Name of the Rose, I think, is the or just The Rose. I think it's just called The Rose, which is a beautiful book as well. Just to follow up on that, on that quote of Lee Young's, would you mind? I know you probably don't love going back to some of the old poems, but I think the poem on page 11 in The Far Country, or Some Far Country, is a beautiful little triptych, and also Still is a beautiful poem, but or Quiz, and these poems are poems that are tremendously courageous and powerful, and I thought it would be helpful, maybe, or meaningful for the audience to hear one or two of those.
Sure. Well, I'll be happy to read this triptych. It's with 3 poems: Truth, Mirror, and Proviso. Yes, my love, we all lie because we don't know any better, or worse, because we can't tell a limo from a hearse, or vow from a curse, or even what's coming in the next verse. Come here, she said. Look me in the eye and say that. I had an errand to do away from your bed. Had to refill your scripts, get you your meds. I straightened my hair in the mirror. You scowled. Vanity was all you said. World, you bid us come, seek and find, admire and praise if your heart can take it all in and learn to let it all go again.
Thank you. Those are beautiful lyrics?
I've never read them aloud.
How did you feel reading them for the first time?
Well, a little out of body, I suppose.
Yeah, like they seem to
it's,
transport you a little as you were reading
well,
them.
Yeah, there's something about the way that poetry was able to process that certain time, and the way it's able to get a hold, and it does take you back.
Yeah.
As much as you may think it's gone, but
Yes. Yeah, that's a wonderful line from Gilgamesh. I don't know if you know Gilgamesh, the Herbert Mason translation, where he refers to grief as an inner atmosphere with an unfamiliar gravity. And actually the beginning of that passage is also powerful. All that is left to one who grieves is convalescence, no change of heart or spiritual conversion. For the heart has changed, and the spirit has converted to a thing that sees how much it costs to lose a friend it loved. So that just seemed like such wise words, and you seem to write so powerfully in that vein.
Well, there's some dark matter at work that can't be measured, and yes, similarly, Denise Levertov described grief famously as a hole you walk around all day and at night you fall into.
Oh,
and
right. Yeah,
it has the same sort of. There's a gravity to it.
Yes,
that you don't realize.
You've rebounded so admirably and courageously. I wonder, in the last few minutes that we have here, if you could just talk about your plans for your new book, and how you feel the new poetry is, or where you feel the new poetry is going at this point. We've heard a lot of it, and I'm really just blown away by a lot of it. But maybe if you could just
I appreciate that.
talk a little bit about that.
So I do hope for a new book sometime in the near future. It's all a matter of timing. Timing's everything, I suppose, when it comes to a publisher finding you. The same as a poem finds you. You do have a limited amount of control over it. So I'll tell you when that book's ready.
We'll announce it.
And we'll, sure.
I'll announce it right here on the BCTV.
And as well as the new CD. For Los Lorcas. But
great.
I would love to give you another poem if we have time.
Sure. Let's end with a poem, and choose whichever one you'd like to read. Is this I assume from your new collection.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I think I'd like to end with this one. It's. If you've ever been in New York City late at night, when most everything is closed, you'll notice that there are a few of these all-night salons that are still open, and you're coming back from a club or a show, and you say, wow, we could have just skipped the show. We could have gone straight to the salon. They're having so much fun in there. So that led me to this poem, and it's called Ode to My Dap. And if you don't know what dap is, it's a customary greeting between two people.
Okay.
So, Ode to My Dap. As soon as I get my dap down, I'll ride uptown and find an all-night salon where Yvonne will synth my Brill cream with Afro sheen, my flat iron world with Jerry curl. I'll wheel and burn my way to the back of Ezekiel's bus, where all of us, not just us, but all of us, wait to give our seats up to the next mother, child, or terrifier with feet. I'll get off at 125th Street, where love will come to town unabashed and beautiful, not on the back of some Ted's force-fed homily, but on opalescent harmony wings of an actual angel. Soon as I get my dap down, Aretha Whitney, Mahalia, Marian, Beyonce, Billy, rising in a clarion chorus, a riff will split wide open the moment they reveal before us life in the key of song. Soon as I get my dap down, I'll belong. I'll rewrite her history on my palm, undam the rivers. No more sitting and weeping on the banks of Babylon. I'll remove these hands from my throat, use them for their intended purpose, get down to what matters most. Not the shade of lives, but the blood of one note, running, spilling, blowing through them. Soon as I get my dap down, I can get my rap down. I'll come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all the crap I learned in high school. Lies I try and can't forget, still tasting the saccharine sweat of my forebears when nothing sweet came of Cain's descent. You can bet the pump will shudder and resist, gutter and ball its fist before drawing blood not from skin, but from a deeper well. The water hole we share will help get my head around how the zoo we're caged in not only caged us apart, but labeled the cages around our hearts in Latin. Soon as I get my dap down, my litany of digits fisted and free, my hand dance hello to me, not me, my synchronized solidarity, my brother, myself, my time out taken to get to know, my other, my body, my soul, my word up, yes, but first the whole of my mother, not just her tongue. The dream I'm coming from, rolled into one bump, slap, skin, snap, fly, dancing light as the Jesus bug on water, fish bite, duck bill cap. Soon as I get my dap down, I'll fold you into a hug. Let's shake on that.
Let's put that on a big stage in the Big Apple. That's a great poem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Partridge. It's been wonderful
Thank
talking
you,
to you. And good luck to you with all of your ventures.
Thanks so much.